Hello and welcome to Eurosport's coverage of the Molson Indy Toronto with me, Ben Edwards, and Jeremy Shaw. The sun is shining, conditions are ideal for the start of round 12 of the series, which will be led away by a Scotsman and an Englishman. 31 years ago, another Scotsman was on pole for a non-championship IndyCar race at Fuji in Japan. His name was Jackie Stewart. Today, Dario Franchitti emulates that. Paul Tracy, though, is the championship leader by 11 points over fellow Canadian Greg Moore. Gilles de Ferran has been going well in recent races, but watch out for Michael Andretti. Fourth in the championship. He's had one race win so far this year, but he is starting from the second row of the grid, and he's won this race in Toronto 5 times in 10 stars. But pole position to Dario Franchitti, and this was the celebration that both Dario and team owner Carl Hogan enjoyed yesterday. Dario said afterwards he'd been warned about the bear hug that he could expect if he did well with Carl Hogan. That's exactly what he was given after that qualifying session. It was a fabulous achievement from the young Scotsman, just 24 years old. He's on pole position here, and with Mark Blundell alongside him, this is a great day for English drivers, or British drivers rather, an English and a Scotsman on the front row here, Jeremy, for an IndyCar race.
Astonishing. Just hope they can keep it up. It has been an awful long time since we've had an Englishman even on the pole, so great effort yesterday by Dario Franchitti. Mark Blundell also. There's some interesting little differences. They're both running Reynard Mercedes tyres and cars with Firestone tyres, each of them, but Dario Franchitti qualified on the harder of the two Firestone options, and Mark Blundell was on the softer of the tyres, and yet Dario was quicker. So pretty interesting that, and it's certainly something we're going to have to keep an eye on this afternoon, Ben.
So it's Dario Franchitti, the 24-year-old from Blackburn in Scotland, who blitzed them all in qualifying yesterday, but Mark Blundell lining up alongside him. The second row is the experienced row. Michael Andretti, 5 times winner. Bobby Rahal has led more laps than anybody else here in Toronto in the past. Scott Pruitt and Alex Zanardi are next up. Alex was actually faster in the morning warm-up this morning than he did in qualifying yesterday, so watch out for him. Andre Ribeiro was quick in the warm-up this morning as well. Raul Boesel is alongside him. Back on row 5, though, is Greg Moore, one of the local favourites. Maurizio Gugelmin, yet to win a race, is alongside. Gilles de Ferran, with that good run of podium finishes recently, moving up in the championship, and Brian Herter was on the podium in Cleveland last time. Christian Fittipaldi is continuing his fight back and his comeback with leading in Cleveland for a while, but Paul Tracy's a long way down. Jimmy Vasser not going well as last year's champion. Gualter Sales won the Indy Lights here last year, but he's got a lot of work to do. Alonso Jr. has had a couple of victories here in the past. He's alongside Michel Jourdain Jr. We've got Parker Johnson and PJ Jones back together on row number 10. Behind them, another Canadian is Patrick Carpentier. He's the only driver to have finished every race this year. Alongside him is Adrian Fernandez in the Lola. Then it's Max Papis and Richie Hearn. Again, Hearn put in a good performance in the warm-up this morning, still struggling with his Lola. Juan Fangio and Arndt Meyer are together on row 13 of the grid, the young German driver. And Hiro Matsushita and Dennis Vitolo are together on row number 14. There's the picture of the cars as they come down the start-finish straight, just beginning to build up a little bit of tyre temperature. And let's take a bit more of a look at this circuit. The pit row, that's the start-finish straight into turn 1, and Jeremy, that's a possible overtaking opportunity.
Very definitely, particularly at the start of the race. We'll see some people diving down the inside, but there's a concrete there at the end on the apex of that corner in turn 1. It's very, very slippery. The cars are now coming to the end of Lakeshore Boulevard. This is the fastest point on the racetrack, about 185 miles an hour or so, down into a second gear hairpin right-hander. That's turn 3, and this again is a prime overtaking point. Coming up a slight rise, a slight left-hand kink, and into this corner here, left-hander at turn 5. Pretty dodgy place to overtake. Some people might try it on the first lap on cold tyres, and that's always a potential accident spot there. Then a very fast sweeper here, turn 6, and towards the end of the lap, 3 or 4 right, left-hand corners, 90-degree turns before the start-finish straight, and plenty of action there will be on this racetrack this afternoon.
Okay, Dario Franchitti, Mark Blundell, there are the two cars. Remember, Dario drives the silver and blue car, the Hogan Racing machine. Alongside him is the Motorola car of Mark Blundell, and we're getting ready for this 95-lap race to get underway. Franchitti on the inside, Blundell on the far side in the blue and red machine. Watch out for Rahal and Andretti right behind them on the second row. We know how aggressive Andretti can be at the start, and away they go. Bobby Rahal's trying to get down the inside of Franchitti. They've made contact. Franchitti spins in front of everybody, and Blundell gets round him, but now everybody is trying to get through the traffic jam on the first corner, and poleman Dario Franchitti spun out of action by Bobby Rahal. A little bit of contact as they turned into the first corner. One of the targets, Ganassi Ganassi cars is caught up in that. I can't spot which one it is, but Carl Hogan cannot believe it. Alan Langrich's engineer just alongside there, but what bad luck for Franchitti.
And terrible irony as well. Of course, Carl Hogan was partners with Bobby Rahal in the race team for 4 years from 1992, when, of course, Bobby Rahal last won the PPG Cup Championship for the 3rd time in his career. There is Carl Hogan. He's not very happy, to put it mildly.
Full course yellow, they've got to get the cars cleared up. Mark Blundell leads Bobby Rahal as a round, and Franchitti gets going again. Now the car looked relatively undamaged, but he couldn't hold the slide after the contact with Rahal, and it's actually Fittipaldi, not one of the target cars, that got caught up in that as well. Christian Fittipaldi, who started reasonably well up on the grid, well, down in 13th in fact in the end of qualifying. Let's take another look. Now watch out for the white and blue car, the Miller car on the left hand side of the picture, trying to get alongside Dario as they came into turn 1. Now he was almost there, but Dario, well, it was just one of those things really. Perhaps Dario didn't quite realise where Bobby was.
You have to turn into the corner at that stage, Ben. There's concrete there on that apex of that corner. There was room there for Bobby Rahal down the inside. Really just one of those things. I mean, you can see Bobby Rahal, he realises he shouldn't really be there at that stage, but it's too late. Dario Franchitti has to turn into the corner. He's got cars all the way around him. And here's another onboard shot there from Bobby Rahal's car. There's his nose poked down the inside of Dario Franchitti. He knows here he's in a difficult situation because he's well to the inside of the corner. It's awfully difficult from that place to carry your momentum through the corner. So he knows there's a potential here for an accident, and there goes Dario around in front of him. Tried to hold on to it. Nowhere to go for poor Dario Franchitti. Great shame for the first corner.
That's another view from Andre Ribeiro's car now, and watch the cars up ahead. You can see Dario tried to hold it but just ran out of lock really, and the car spun round in front. Ribeiro managed to avoid the action. All the drivers sort of geared up to expecting some sort of avoiding manoeuvre at that first corner. It's always going to be a problem here, but what a great shame. And as you say, Rahal perhaps just being a little optimistic. He was almost in position but not quite there. This is the view from Andretti's car, and again you can see Rahal looking for the opportunistic move, realised it was too late, but by then they were both in trouble. And Andretti, oh, he did a good job, didn't he, to get round. They weren't travelling very fast by then. He'd taken most of the speed off, but look how many places he lost as a result of this. So the car's coming around behind the pace car, but we've heard it's going to go green this time as they come round, so not long. Yes, you can see the pace cars into the pits, and Mark Blundell leads the field as they come round to complete only the second lap here in Toronto after a dramatic opening encounter, and Rahal is in second place. This time he doesn't try anything on the leader. Third position for Scott Pruitt, fourth for Andre Ribeiro, fifth for Greg Moore. That's a great start opening lap for Greg Moore. He managed to avoid the accident, and remember, Greg started in 9th position on the grid. Watch out for Ribeiro there. He's in the yellow fronted car, and he's trying to get past the car of Scott Pruitt. Also look at that, Pruitt now just holding him off as they come down into turn number 3. Meanwhile, Mark Blundell still up front.
I'm not sure whether Bobby Rahal might have got around the outside there. They were side by side going into that corner. We couldn't quite see. Yeah, there is the white car, the white and blue car as opposed to the blue and white car. I think Bobby Rahal might have just snuck past in the same way that Andre Ribeiro was trying to pull off the same sort of move on Scott Pruitt there. So
not quite. Not quite. No, Mark just managed to hold on to it. Difficult to see. There you can see that it is Mark Blundell's car still in front, and the Motorola car ahead of the Miller car at the moment. Pruitt in third place under attack from Ribeiro. Then the rest of the field come through. Moore, Andretti, Bozell, Zanardi is down in 8th position. Jimmy Vasser is 9th. Paul Tracy is in 10th, the championship leader, ahead of Gujamin, Salas, De Ferran a long way down in 13th. Then Herter and Unser in 15th. Parker Johnston 16th. Jones in 17th position. And of course we'll try and keep an eye on the progress of Dario Franchitti as we go through this race. He's right down at the back of the field at the moment. We'll have to keep an eye on to see whether he can make up for any of that lost ground. Such a disappointing start for the Scotsman in that incident with Bobby Rahal.
It really all boiled down at that start as to whether you got through or not, which side of the road you were on. Ribeiro there was on the inside. He was able to get through. Some of the others not quite so lucky.
The view from on board with Ribeiro then as they come past some of the packed grandstands. There's a huge crowd here today, around about 70,000 people they reckon are here today, and that's a new record figure I think for the Sunday. Last year it was some 66,000 people. Beautiful weather conditions, just ideal for today's race. And look at Blundell beginning to pull away now from Bobby Rahal. Remember, Blundell is on the slightly softer Firestone tyre, and he seems to be making good use of that, good advantage from that tyre. Rahal in second, Scott Pruitt in third, Ribeiro in fourth position. Then Greg Moore just a little further back, but Moore's under a bit of pressure now from Alex Zanardi. Zanardi's got past Andretti. That's a move from the Italian, and he's showing some of the pace that he exhibited in this morning's warm-up session as well. Down into turn 3, Michael Andretti at the back of that threesome now. Moore, Zanardi, Andretti, and Zanardi is the one to watch at the moment. Remember, he fought his way up through the field in Cleveland in an absolutely superb way, and this is the sort of race that he wants to get as many points as possible from the Canadians.
Yeah, he made up a position on each of the last two laps. He passed Raul Boesel a couple of laps ago, as you say, and then last time he got a pass round Michael Andretti as well. Greg Moore next in his sights. Greg Moore, local favourite here, of course, in Canada, and the huge section of the crowd cheering for the Canadian driver. And there he is, Alex Zanardi, tucked in behind him as they go around turn 11. Difficult to get too close to a car in that corner, particularly in the early stages of the race. You lose your downforce on the front end of the car there, and he doesn't want to do anything silly at this stage. So he'll bide his time, try to get a run off this corner onto Lakeshore Boulevard, see if he can get him on the main straightaway.
Let's watch out. They're building up to 185 miles per hour in 6th gear as they come down here. Zanardi's gone for the outside line, and he's gone around the outside of Greg Moore. Fantastic stuff. He's got that car working brilliantly on the brakes as they come down there. And Zanardi, again, he's on the softer Firestone tyre, remember, so he will be getting a little bit more grip from those tyres in these early stages of the race. The question is, will the tyres last right up to the first pit stop for Alex Zanardi? Well, Greg Moore will be very aware of the fact that Zanardi's on the softer tyre, and therefore perhaps not intent on battling him at this point in the race. Zanardi's caught right up onto the tail of Andre Ribeiro already. Just shows you the sort of pace that Zanardi is driving at. And meanwhile, Mark Blundell is still pulling away bit by bit up front. Rahal goes through in second, Pruitt in third, Ribeiro in the yellow, blue and red car there in fourth, and then Alex Zanardi, the star of Cleveland. There goes Blundell. There's the gap you can see back to Bobby Rahal, and now with the view back to Alex Zanardi's car from the back of Andre Ribeiro's Reynard, and Ribeiro doing a fine job this weekend. He was the pole sitter here last year. Look at Zanardi, he's gone for the inside, and he's going to go into that position. Another very clean piece of overtaking from Alex Zanardi, and who said you can't overtake on a street race? This track really has got a couple of good overtaking areas.
Yeah, I think perhaps they might have set that car up with a little bit less swing than they might otherwise have run. Enables him to be quick on that straightaway. Against that, of course, he needs to make sure he has a good exit out of turn 1 so he can get onto the straightaway well. But Alex Zanardi really on the move in the opening laps of this race. Tremendous effort. 5th place already for car number 4.
Blundell is some 1.8 seconds ahead at the moment of Bobby Rahal in second position, and so far so good in terms of yellow flags. We just had that one yellow flag at the start of the race, and everybody else has behaved themselves reasonably well as the rest of the field comes past our commentary position. We're all turning into turn number 1 there with Andre Ribeiro. I'm just looking down through the field. I can see Franchitti at the tail of the field. He's got past a few cars already, and looks like it's Michel Jourdain is the next one on his list. That's got him into 21st position, and he is looking very aggressive in his fight back up through the field, but he really has a hard afternoon's work ahead of him. Good view of the concrete patch there on the apex of that corner, and that's been the problem for all of the drivers and the teams this weekend, to get the cars to deliver any sort of grip over the concrete patches that are in various places around the circuit. Some teams seem to have done better than others, and certainly the team of Dario Franchitti, the Hogan Racing, and indeed the Pat West team did a great job in practice of getting their car sorted out. And the Target Ganassi team didn't seem to get theirs worked out quite as quickly, but Zanardi now is going very quickly indeed. Blundell through across the line to complete lap number 8. Bobby Rahal in second position. Pruitt, Zanardi, Ribeiro, Moore, Andretti, then Boesel, and then Jimmy Vasser running in 9th place ahead of Paul Tracy in 10th position. Great racing and showing up front, and I think still Alex Zanardi is the one to watch as we go through the early part of this stint, and still Blundell just eking away that advantage up to 2.4 seconds, the gap between himself and Rahal on the last lap. Zanardi not quite able to run alongside Scott Pruitt in the same way that he was with Andre Ribeiro. Interesting battle between the engines there. We've got a Ford engine in the back of Scott Pruitt's car, and a Honda engine, of course, in the back of Zanardi's.
Ahead of those two, of course, Mark Blundell, his lead now 2.4 seconds. The Mercedes engine, of course, in Mark Blundell's Reynard, Ford engine in Bobby Rahal's Reynard as well. And so most of the combinations here covered towards the front of this field. Fascinating stuff. Alex Zanardi clearly, I think, is faster than Scott Pruitt, but can't find his way past just yet.
So coming out of the turn number 11, just opposite our commentary position here, it's a fantastic corner. They're coming through there at about 100 miles an hour, turning in at just over 90, then building up the speed. They come on right out to the wall, down through turn number 1 now, and then accelerating again. This taken in second gear, dropping down to about 60 miles an hour, then accelerating back up through turn number 2 at over 100, then accelerating to 185 here in 6th gear, hard on the brakes. This was where Franchitti made up all his time, he reckoned, in qualifying yesterday, just by being a hero on the brakes. He said he just normally braked at the 400-metre board. He decided to brake at the 300-metre board, and he still made it round the corner. That's how he reckoned he got that fabulous pole position yesterday. But we're now riding on board with Michael Andretti, who's still hounding the back of Greg Moore.
Yeah, talking of Dario Franchitti, he's up to 19th place now. He's just past Patrick Carpentier. Next of him on the racetrack is the Reynard Toyota of PJ Jones.
Great shots from on board Michael Andretti. He doesn't seem to be in too much of a hurry in the early stages of this race, but remember, he knows how to win here. 5 victories. It's really a remarkable record there. You could see just how close Blundell got to the wall. He's driving with so much confidence at the moment, Mark Blundell. The last few races, the win in Portland, a good qualifying effort in Cleveland that went wrong due to pit strategy more than anything else. Already coming up to lap one of the back markers, that's Dennis Vitolo, who's back out this race. First time since very early on in the season for Dennis Vitolo. But Blundell, there he goes, past Vitolo safely, driving absolutely superbly here this weekend. He's been as close to the walls as anybody, and yet he hasn't been hitting the walls. He's looked absolutely fantastic, hasn't he, Jeremy?
Inch perfect. It's amazing, you know, the bit of confidence he has now, right on the top of his game. Great to see.
Ray Hall through into in second place, through past Dennis Vitolo. Vitolo doing a good job here. He's keeping well out of the way. Remember, the driver of this car last week, Charlie Neerberg, had a few problems when the leaders came around. Dennis Vitolo, though, doing a good job. He's more experienced than Neerberg, and he's done a few IndyCar races in his time, and he seems to be doing a good job of keeping out of the way. Moore and Andretti have just both gone past him as well, as the leaders are back down into turn number 1, and Zanardi's continuing this campaign of trying to find a way past Scott Pruitt, but Pruitt's car seems to be very rapid on this straight. Let's look in the background as Pruitt still holds the position. Pruitt in the Firestone car, the yellow and orange coloured car. Zanardi in the red car, looking for a way past. Pruitt defending his line, fair enough, he's allowed to do that. Meanwhile, Moore was under more pressure from Andretti. Oh yes, had a little go there, Andretti, but there wasn't the room again. And now Zanardi, oh, he's found a new place to overtake. Great stuff from the Italian, and he slips through on the left-hander there, and Alex Zanardi finally gets past Scott Pruitt.
Yeah, we talked about turn 5 earlier on. There he was down the inside into turn 5. It's a very tricky place. If you're going to make a pass there, it's got to be absolutely precise. You have to be completely alongside the guy you're trying to get past, otherwise he's probably not even going to see you. He's going to turn in and you're both going to crash. So great move by Alex Zanardi.
Now then, how quickly can he catch Bobby Rahal? The gap between Rahal and Pruitt last time was, well, let's just check it this time. Rahal Zanardi is just under 2 seconds as they come round this time. There he is, Zanardi. That's his progress up through the field from his starting position of 6th up to 3rd now. This a replay of the pass, and again very committed, down on the brakes on the inside, put his car, look, there was a little bit of contact there, just touched wheels, but that was a great move from Alex Zanardi, and there was not a lot that Scott Pruitt could do about it. And now with the gap just under 2 seconds last time around, let's see how quickly Alex Zanardi can catch up to the back of Bobby Rahal's car. Ribeiro still looking good as well in that 5th position.
Yeah, great effort by the Tasman Motorsports team. Of course, they've had a great weekend so far already. Neil Crompton in the Super Touring race had a 2nd place yesterday behind Dominic Dobson, won the 2nd race in their Honda Accord, and earlier this morning, Elio Castro Neves and Tony Kanana 1-2 in the Indy Lights race. So a great weekend so far for Tasman Motorsports.
Mark Blundell leads here after 12 laps of the 95. Welcome back to Toronto for Eurosport's coverage of round 12 of the PPG Kart World Series, and it's British driver Mark Blundell who leads at the moment. We've completed 15 laps and he has a 3.2 second lead over Bobby Rahal. Alex Zanardi is now just 7/10 of a second behind Bobby Rahal and is still looking one of the fastest on track. Meanwhile, you're looking at the battle between Paul Tracy and Maurizio Gugelmin. This is the battle for 10th place. The championship leader, Paul Tracy in the Penske, really not on the pace here this weekend. They are struggling to get the car to work properly. Meanwhile, Dario Franchitti, the man who started from pole position, he is in 16th place after the contact on the opening lap with Bobby Rahal that dropped him right to the tail of the field. But Franchitti is charging. He's driving very well, and he's driving aggressively, and he's passing people.
He is indeed. Tremendous job. He's right up now behind a whole group of cars there. They were stuck behind Gualter Salas. Well, last couple of laps, Gilles de Ferran and Brian Herter have both got past Salas, who is now running 14th, and right behind Salas are Alan Jr. and Dario Franchitti. So he's making progress all the time, Ben. Great drive so far.
Well, let's see what that progress continues. Meanwhile, you're watching Zanardi now right on the tail of Bobby Rahal's cars, and Rahal is now beginning to defend that line down into turn 3, one of the critical overtaking areas as we've seen already here this afternoon. Zanardi, though, looking very strong indeed to try and find a way past the former 3 times IndyCar champion. It's been a long time since Bobby's won a race, but if he's going to do it somewhere this year, this would be a suitable place. He's led more laps than anybody else on this racetrack in the past 12 years, and Bobby Rahal, the winner of the first ever Toronto street track race, always goes well here, was talking about it in the press conference yesterday. Meanwhile, Mark Blundell's got a little bit held up behind Hiro Matsushita. There he goes, and in fact Matsushita's come in, but a lot of Blundell's lead there eaten away by Matsushita. It was 3.3 seconds before Blundell got held up there, and the gap, let's just see, is down to 1.1 seconds. Bad news indeed for Blundell as he got held up behind the back marker. He's now got to work hard again to pull away from Bobby Rahal and Alex Zanardi. Zanardi just a fraction behind Rahal as they came round. Meanwhile, Franchitti's still on the move up through the field. He's now...
Yeah, 14th place. He got past Gualter Salas and Alan Jr. So next ahead of him is Brian Herter. There's actually a couple of seconds between those two. I fancy Dario will eat that 2 seconds up pretty quickly.
So, Alex Zanardi, look at that, just sliding the car a little bit in his chase of Bobby Rahal. Rahal's controlling this position at the moment, but how much longer can he keep off the Italian? Blundell has pulled away again a little bit up front now that he's got some clear space ahead of him. And Rahal is busy concentrating on his mirrors to stop Zanardi coming past. This is coming through the last couple of corners to complete the lap, around through turn 11, right in front of our commentary box. And Zanardi's had a good run out of this corner. I wonder if he's going to have a little go into turn number 1 at the end. I don't think he's quite close enough to have a go into there, but you can see he's right under the rear wing of Rahal's Reynard. Blundell through. There's Rahal, there's Zanardi, and once again he's tucked under the rear wing. Now here's an opportunity as they come down towards turn 3. Maximum speed building up here, and Zanardi, which way is he going to go? Outside or inside? He's going for the outside. Rahal is defending the inside line. Oh, Rahal's made a little mistake that could give Zanardi the chance to get alongside, but he doesn't quite manage it. But what about up into turn 5 where we saw him go past? Yes, he does it there into turn 5, a little bit wide on the exit, but he's managed to get through safely. Wow, this is great racing from Alex Zanardi. He really put Rahal under pressure. Rahal made the little mistake at turn 3, and Alex capitalized on it 2 corners later.
Fantastic. So this is what IndyCar racing is all about. Wheel-to-wheel contact, not contact, wheel-to-wheel driving and no contact is what I meant to say. And tremendous stuff. I mean, the crowd here is literally on their feet in parts of this racetrack, and it's great to watch at this stage.
It is. Now then, Zanardi is going chasing after Blundell, of course. The gap is 2.4 seconds between these two now, and Mark is going to have his mirrors full of that red car fairly soon, I should think, judging by the way that Alex Zanardi is driving here. The team has obviously done a fine job as Blundell already laps Dennis Vitolo for the 2nd time. It just shows you how far off the pace Vitolo is at the moment. He's been lapped twice in 19 laps here. But Zanardi's pace, very, very impressive, considering they were struggling a bit in the qualifying on Friday and Saturday. This is a replay of Zanardi's move on Rahal. And look, Zanardi went in a little bit too quick, if anything. Ran a little wide on the exit, but he managed to keep it out of the wall. Came pretty close. I should think that caused a few heartbeats. But he just managed to keep it out of the wall, and Rahal had to cede the place. So Zanardi to 2nd, Rahal down to 3rd, Pruitt's 4th, Ribeiro 5th, Greg Moore in 6th, Michael Andretti is 7th, Bozell 8th, Vassar 9th, Tracy is 10th, Guterman 11th, De Ferran is in 12th place, then it's Brian Herter 13th, and Dario Franchitti in 14th position, 2 seconds behind Brian Herter, but closing that gap up fairly quickly as well. Big train of cars, there you are, just going down pit straight at the moment. Very, very close indeed as Andretti goes past Vitolo. Again, he stays out of the way pretty comfortably. Just going past our position now, Dario Franchitti, just closing that gap up to Herter a little bit, but it's becoming harder work now because he's getting up amongst the quicker runners. As Michael Andretti now, look at this, Andretti on board, you ride with Michael Andretti, looks at Greg Moore, tries to go around the outside. Now here's a risky manoeuvre, but he does it. Michael Andretti goes up one place. That puts him into 6th place now. And Andretti, who lost ground at the beginning of the race when he got caught out by the incident between Franchitti and Rahal, now begins to make up some ground himself.
That was a good move, wasn't it, by Michael Andretti? Difficult place to pass that. He's got good straightaway speed, I think, and he was able to draw alongside Greg Moore, and then Michael Andretti's experience, and you can see the marbles here offline just incidentally. You just saw them in the corner of the screen there, but a great move by Michael Andretti, as you say, up into 6th place now, and next in his sights will be Andre Ribeiro.
Yes, Andre Ribeiro driving a great race at the moment as Andretti slides his way out of that turn 11. There's Ribeiro at the back of this group, the yellow, red and blue. He just locked up. That was the one locking up. Andre Ribeiro, the Brazilian, who was on pole here last year, had a good race, didn't quite work out for him in the end, was a little unlucky. Dennis Vitolo, meanwhile, has come into the pits, which is probably a bit of a relief for the leaders. And Arndt Meyer is the next one that is about to be lapped by Mark Blundell, the young German rookie who's been competing this year. We're taking a look at a replay of the pass of Michael Andretti on Greg Moore, and Jeremy, this pass, just textbook stuff really on the outside.
Yeah, isn't it? Just absolutely textbook, and laid on the brakes there. Greg Moore certainly didn't press the issue. He certainly seemed to back out, let him go, didn't he? Didn't force the issue at all. He's quite content at this stage, not just to make sure that he doesn't overwork his tyres, I think, and keep everything in control. Just if you can stay close to Michael Andretti, he's still in the top half a dozen. He's looking at the PPG Cup Championship is Greg Moore. As long as he finishes in the top 5 or 6 places, he'll be happy.
Well, Mark Blundell still leads at the moment from Zanardi, Rahal, Pruitt, Ribeiro, Michael Andretti in 6th place now. Gap between the two leaders was 1.2 seconds last time around. Arndt Meyer now gets out of the way, we hope, of Alex Zanardi. Yes, he does, reasonably safely, and slots back in behind Zanardi again. So Zanardi continues his chase of race leader Mark Blundell. And Blundell has more than sort of trebled the number of laps that he's led already this year, although he's won a race this year already, Mark Blundell. There, by the way, is the car of Dennis Vitolo being pushed away. Mark Blundell has won a race in Portland this year, but he's led very few laps. Remember, he only grabbed the victory in Portland on the very last lap. So Mark now here at Toronto has led more laps than he has throughout the rest of the season, and it's really just goes to show the confidence, the ability, the way this team has gelled in recent weeks with that result in Portland, and even before that with Alan McDonald working so well with Mark in terms of the engineering side of things, and everything really clicking at the moment. But still in the early stages, Rahal moves past Arndt Meyer safely. He's still being chased by Scott Pruitt in 4th position, and now you're on board with Andre Ribeiro. He's in 5th place, and he also is about to slide past Arndt Meyer as we go down this long straight. Let's just see with Meyer. Let's hopefully he moves over to the left-hand side. Ribeiro is able to go down on the inside safely on the brakes into that position. De Ferran into the pits. Now then, this is early. Lap number 23, and there must be some sort of problem. They've got that front cover off, so it looks as though De Ferran's in trouble here. Yeah, and that, of course, put Dario Franchitti up another position, now up to 13th, and he's closed up on the back of Brian Herter's Shell Reynard Ford. So Dario's still making very, very good progress indeed. Running the same sort of pace as the leaders, mid 61 second laps as opposed to 58.6 of his pole, but really doing a fine job so far, making up for that early contretemps there in turn 1, and keeping his cool, making progress. Good job. We just had news from the pits that it's a braking problem, an intermittent brake problem for Gilles de Ferran, and that's what's caused him to come into the pits, and that's why they've got that front cover off and delving down into the pedal box there. Patrick Carpentier is also into the pits, and that's a very early stop. They're doing a wing change on the front of that car. Now, whether he's just struggling with handling, a little bit of a slow stop as he gets away once more. Patrick Carpentier running quite a long way down the order, but that puts him even further down now. Got him down in 26th position at the moment, and the Canadian having a tough time on home territory, where he won a race here last year in the Atlantic Series. Well, back to what's happening up front. Michael Andretti still chasing after Andre Ribeiro, and the Swift chassis has been working well all weekend here, but they just haven't had much luck, the two of them in the race. Christian Fittipaldi's running down in 17th place. Remember, he got involved in that incident at the start. He stopped, stalled, and he also had to start at the back again. So he's also fighting his way up through the field, but the Swifts chassis of Andretti and Fittipaldi really are are looking good around this street track, and Michael Andretti was talking just on Friday about how they've managed to transfer so much information from the Lola that they ran here last year directly onto the Swift, and for it immediately to be fast as soon as it hit the street track here in Toronto. But Andretti in 6th now, still looking for a way of catching Brazilian Andre Ribeiro just ahead. Coming down to lap 1 of the Toyota cars as well, as Ribeiro that's a little bit closer in there as well. That's a good view of Michael Andretti.
Yes, a good close-up view of that car. That was Juan Fangio's car. He's running down in 22nd place. A lap down there. Good exit out of that corner for Michael Andretti. He pulls up alongside Andre Ribeiro on the outside of into turn 6. No way he can make a pass there, but he's certainly making his presence felt. Andre Ribeiro knows that Michael Andretti is not only behind him, he wants past.
He does indeed, yes, and I think everybody treats Michael Andretti with a lot of respect. They know he's a hard racer, and he'll take any chance that's half given to him. There's Paul Tracy, our championship leader at the moment, down in 10th position. His championship lead just 11 points, but let's see how Paul drives today. There have been occasions this year where the car hasn't been quite right, but he's shown a good degree of maturity this year so far in terms of scoring points when perhaps the car's not a race winner. Let's see if he can manage to do that again on sort of home territory here.
Yeah, actually lost a place on that last lap to Mauricio Guzman. I think this is it coming up here. There they are diving down inside Aunt Maya. Paul Tracy gets it well sideways under braking there, clips the wall with the left rear corner. Oh, that's why he lost the position.
Yeah, well, what was I just saying about him not making too many mistakes, eh? Well, there you go. Paul Tracy losing a place to Mauricio Guzman, but he's still there. He's still in the fight. That's the main thing. There he goes in the number 3 Penske, and the Penske's looking forward perhaps to next weekend when they get to their home track, the Michigan International Speedway, where the 500-mile race will certainly sort a few of them out. Mark Blundell leads this race so far. 3 seconds his advantage over Zanardi. Interesting to see that Zanardi has not really closed up this gap, Jeremy.
No, because Mark Blundell lost a couple of seconds when he had to get past Hiro Matsushita, and the gap was down to just over, well, not much over a second actually, about 5 laps ago, and Mark has continually increased the gap, just around about 3 seconds now. So Mark able to run a good consistent pace here, just a tad faster, I think, than Alex Zanardi. Interesting stuff.
Now we completed 28 laps. We'll be beginning to get into the pit lane window, the pit stop window, fairly soon now. Going to be around lap 35 or lap 30 to 35 that we'll see them coming into the pits. Oh, look at that, Ribeiro locking up on the brakes, trying to get past Matsushita, and that's almost given Andretti a chance again to get past the Brazilian. Doesn't quite make it. Matsushita needs to get out of the way a little bit there for Ribeiro's sake, and it's not proving very easy. What is Matsushita doing? He seems to be in the middle of the road, which makes life very difficult for everybody. But what you've got to remember is that there's a lot of rubber being thrown offline here. The drivers were talking about it as early as Friday. A lot of marbles offline. Ooh, squeezing past. Ribeiro gets through in the end, and he has to take to that rather offline area, and that probably is why both those cars sliding there. They both picked up rubber offline as they got past Matsushita, and you could see the evidence as the cars both slid more than we've seen over the last few laps. De Ferran's car back in the pits, still being worked on with the Walker Racing crew, and after such a good run recently, they're in trouble.
And Paul Tracy comes into the pits. We're looking at Gilles de Ferran's car still being worked on there, but Paul Tracy just came in the pits as well. The Penske guys changing tyres, having a look at that left rear corner, and he seems to be on his way again. So there he goes now, Paul Tracy back into the fray. Was running in, he came into the pits in 13th place, which moves Dario up 1 more place, 12th for Dario Franchitti, and Paul Tracy now back at the tail end of the cars on the lead lap.
So we're beginning to see the first of the pit stops now. The leaders should be coming in fairly soon, I would think, back on board with Michael Andretti. And we've had a report that there was contact between Gualter Sales and Al Unser. Sales is running in 13th position, Al Unser now in 15th.
Yes, Unser's been stuck behind Sales the whole race. Several people have managed to get past Gualter Sales, Al Unser Jr. not among them.
Well, he's obviously getting a bit frustrated in his attempts to get past, and there's been a little bit of contact, but I think they've both survived. They're still going round as the leaders have gone through. Rahal then in 3rd, Pruitt, Ribeiro, Andretti, more than Bozell. Both of the Patrick Racing cars going well, both Pruitt and Bozell well up in the ranking at the moment. Gujamin slips past Hiro Matsushita there, and then Jimmy Vasser is the next one on the list to go through. Then it's Brian Herder. There's Franchitti. There's our first glimpse of the Scotsman since the early lap disaster when he and Bobby Rahal made contact. Meanwhile, Greg Moore coming under pressure from Raul Bozell there, and Greg Moore not showing the sort of pace we might have expected, and perhaps this first stint the car not working as well as he would like. We may see some changes from Greg Moore and the Forsyth Racing team. They may well make a few handling modifications to this car when he comes in for the first stop in the next few laps.
Yeah, as you say, pit stops beginning to be made. Alan Jr., we talked about that little bit of content there. He is in the pits in car number 2. He was running 15th, now falling back off the lead lap. Simply, you can see the damage to the front of the corner cut.
That's right. There's a bit of a straightening up process going on. Some subtle engineering on the front wishbones of Alonso Jr.'s car. There obviously was a fairly hefty contact between him and Sales, and oh, what a disappointment. We keep saying it, don't we? Every race it seems to be a disappointment for Alonso Jr., but whatever it is, he is down the order once again. Marc Blundell leads after 30 laps here. Alex Zanardi in second position, Rahal in third, Pruitt is fourth, Ribeiro fifth, and Andretti holds on to sixth place. Welcome back to Toronto. Brian Hurt has just come into the pits. He's just been passed by Dario Franchitti, and Franchitti's in fact moved up to 9th position now, with a few stops being made, but Blundell is yet to come in. Look at the in front there, you can see the Motorola guys getting ready, and it looks as though race leader Marc Blundell is set to come into the pits. He's in. Marc Blundell is into the pits, the race leader after 33 laps, and second place man is also in. This is going to be a battle between the Pac West crew and the Ganassi team. There is Alex Zanardi. These two were separated by some 4 seconds before the pit stops. This is where the pressure is on the Pac West crew. They really are becoming one of the top teams in the championship now, but can they put in a good pit stop performance? We know that the Ganassi crew is always quick. The fuel goes aboard. Blundell gets it lit up and comes back out, and he should be well ahead of Zanardi by the time he comes out. So Blundell comes back out, but that of course changes the lead around because a few guys have not yet stopped, and we've got reports that Brian Herter has just picked up a black flag for pit lane violation in the pits when he came in for his stop. Michael Andretti's in and out, and Ribeiro just gets out in front of him again. So the positions have not changed between these two. Remember, Andretti was behind Ribeiro for several laps, and that's exactly the situation as they come back out onto the track. Franchitti has moved up the order, but it looks as though he's just come into the pits. Brian Herter has come back into the pits to serve his penalty for having gone wrong in the pit lane. There's Max Papis out on track at the moment as well. So everything just needing to sort itself out for a lap or so, as Zanardi was not really able to make up much of ground on Marc Blundell at that point. There is Dario Franchitti driving superbly after that initial problem, and he now trying to make up as much ground as possible. Raul Boesel has yet to stop, so he's our race leader at the moment, and we still wait for him to have service. Blundell goes through, and Marc Blundell at the moment is in 5th position. No, he's in 2nd position, that's right. He's in 2nd place, and he's the leader of those who have stopped. So a great stop from Pac West. There's Greg Moore in and out fairly safely. Guterman right behind him as well, and that's the way they come out onto the circuit. So we've got all the way to this first round of pit stops without a yellow flag, apart from the one on the opening lap, and that's pretty remarkable. I think we were all expecting to see more yellow flags that would determine a certain amount of strategy in the early part of this race. Jimmy Vasser also into the pits and comes back out as well, but still waiting to see Raul Boesel. There he is, and Raul Boesel, our race leader at the moment until he comes in to the pits, and you can see he's right on the end of his pit window. He's got to be in, so there he is. He's in now, and Boesel is the last of the front runners to make his pit stop. So that will mean that Marc Blundell is our race leader. We look out of the commentary box window to see as he comes around through turns 9, 10, 11. There, we can see him now as you watch Boesel in the pits. I'm watching Marc Blundell come along the start-finish straight. Across the line he goes, and that completes lap number 36. And his lead now over Alex Zanardi, 2.1 seconds. So the situation remains pretty much as it was before they both came into the pits. Boesel gets away safely, and he rejoins the fray now. He's going to come out just ahead of Greg Moore by the looks of things if he's lucky. That will mean he's down in about 8th position. There is the battle up front as Zanardi just puts a lap on Adrian Fernandez. It's still Zanardi chasing Marc Blundell as we're now into the middle stint of this race.
There is Christian Fittipaldi in the pits for his regular stop. He was running 11th before that stop. I think when things sort themselves out again, he'll be back around about 14th or so. But doing a pretty respectable job this weekend. Once again, Christian Fittipaldi really has been mighty since he came back from that broken leg. And here is Marc Blundell. There is Alex Zanardi in 2nd place. A couple of seconds at the most between them. We've got a fascinating race here. We've still got well over halfway to go. Plenty of time.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? These two very focused, very determined drivers. Marc Blundell with a victory behind him this year. Alex Zanardi with 2 victories behind him this year. Ribeiro is now in 3rd place. Michael Andretti in 4th. And Scott Pruitt, the main man, who lost out in those pit stops. So there's Zanardi's car bouncing its way down the straight. Really is quite a bumpy track, this one, and the drivers will be feeling this as they go through the race. I tell you, it's a very physical racetrack, this one. The cars sliding when they hit these concrete patches as well. Makes it difficult for the drivers. They turn in, the car slides as it hits the concrete, and then as it comes off the concrete onto the tarmac, the front end grips, but the back end still on the concrete. So they get into a big oversteer, and that's what's been causing a lot of the setup problems for the drivers this weekend. It really has made life very difficult indeed, but Zanardi seems to be handling it very well. But even better than him at the moment is Mark Blundell. The gap between them last time, 2.5 seconds. Let's just check that gap again as Blundell comes out of the final corner, goes across the start-finish line. Now he's completed 38 laps and the gap is 2.8 seconds. So he's opened it up by another couple of tenths of a second. Good stuff this from Mark Blundell, and they really have got that car dialed in. Let's just check on the position of Dario Franchitti after those first stops. He lies in 11th position now behind championship leader Paul Tracy, and they're just going through now, and the gap between Tracy and Franchitti is just around 2 seconds. So Franchitti still with a fair bit of work to be done. There's Andre Ribeiro. Max Papis still running competitively at the moment. He's running down in 20th position. Max Papis, but the car still holding together. And Ribeiro putting in this great performance at the moment. There he is, just going through the picture. Ribeiro having switched from the Lola chassis to the Reynard. And Jeremy, there's been some important news concerning the Lola concern this week, hasn't there?
Yeah, there's been some kind of a buyout there between some of the major forces at Lola Cars. Eric Broadley, who founded the company well over 30 years ago, seems to have been ousted from the main board of Lola Cars. He remains in charge of Lola Composites, that actually does most of the building of the chassis, but he's no longer a part of Lola Cars, it seems. And the new group, there's several of the engineers are involved with that group, and they're trying to revitalize the company and come back strong, they hope, next season.
Well, we shall see. Let's hope that Lola do recover. It's been such a difficult season for the Huntington-based chassis manufacturer that provides cars to this racing championship. There is Michael Andretti, who had 5 wins last year with the Lola, but of course he has switched to the Swift chassis for this year and has already got 1 win in that particular car. But he's had a lot of many successful years with Lola. Of course, as did Nigel Mansell when he came over here in 1993. He won the championship in a Lola, and it's a great shame to have seen this disappointing season for them. But Andre Ribeiro is just reveling in the Reynard chassis, it has to be said. He's loving every moment of driving this car, and the Tasman team have done a superb job of setting the car up right. I was asking them if they'd had an awful lot of help from Reynard in terms of the setup, and they said no, not really. Oh, Dario's off, Franchitti is off, he's locked up, gone straight on somewhere. What a shame. It looks as though his race is run, and oh, what a disappointing end to the weekend after such a superb Saturday. Yeah, you know, the thing foremost on his mind this weekend was not so much winning the race as finishing the race, and he's patently failed to do that. It looks like it's the end of turn 3 there. Funny place to go off there, right on the exit of the corner. One has to think perhaps he had a bit of contact with perhaps a slower car, because they can see the brake marks locked up, and it's not the sort of place where you just lock up and slide into the barrier. That's as you're coming out of the corner there. So potentially, perhaps he could have clipped, I guess, the inside barrier there. That might explain if he clipped the inside apex of that corner and put him off there into the outside. And end of the day for Dario Franchitti. He was up in 11th place at the time. Great shame for the young Scotsman. Yes, it just doesn't seem to be coming together for him in the races at the moment. Carl Hogan is basically putting his money into that project. They're still looking for a sponsor, but the delight of yesterday, the disappointment of today, there's no doubt that everybody here, though, in the United States really rates Dario Franchitti. All the other drivers as well are very impressed with his performances so far this year, and he is a definite star of the future, if not of right now. Very much, really nearly right now, but he's just got to get a few more race results to prove that. Zanardi just making his way past, looks like PJ Jones, slightly further down the order. Jones in the All-American Racers car, going past the stricken machine of Dario Franchitti. Hopefully they'll be able to get that car out of the way fairly cleanly. Let's hope we don't have to have a full course yellow. Yeah, he parked it pretty cleverly. They're right next to a little hole in the wall. With a bit of luck, the marshals will be able to pull that car just out of the way, and we won't have a full course yellow. Incidentally, Mark Blundell, he's stretched down his lead once again, 3.8 seconds now over the car number 4 of Alex Zanardi. And meanwhile, Andre Ribeiro is running some very fast times indeed. He pulled off a second away from Zanardi's advantage that time around. Ribeiro is now just over 8 seconds behind the leader and less than 5 seconds behind Alex Zanardi. That's right. He's got to get past a little bit of traffic that Zanardi's just dealt with, though, and that may explain a little bit of that closing up process. Zanardi's now clear of the traffic. As we mentioned just a moment ago, the main guy who lost out in the first round of pit stops was Scott Pruitt. He was running up there, and now down in 5th position. Rahal as well, of course. Bobby Rahal, he lost out a lot. But in fact, when you were away for the break, we saw Rahal already dropping away. He was running in 3rd place before that first round of stops, but for some reason he dropped 1 or 2 places even before they came into the pits and made their first stop. So Bobby Rahal now running around in 6th place, and it does look as though he's struggling. There he is in 6th place now, and he's got to try and find a way past Scott Pruitt. There's the yellow car of Pruitt right ahead of us. Pruitt, who had a very good start to his championship season this year, and of course was the winner in Surfers Paradise in Australia. That was just round 2 of the championship. Had a good 3rd place in Long Beach as well, 3rd place in Rio as well for Pruitt. Since then things haven't gone quite according to plan, and since that result his best has been in 8th place, which was last weekend, in fact in Cleveland. And Scott Pruitt now lies down in 6th place in the championship on 71 points, whereas he had been amongst the top 2 in the early part of the season. Rahal, meanwhile, just applying that pressure. Interesting to see the sun's gone in a little bit. The temperature's just cooled down a fraction more. That could make a few changes as well in terms of the tyre strategy and how quickly the softer tyres are going off.
Yes, indeed. I know Mark Blundell was expressing a little bit of concern yesterday. If it was going to be hot today, he was running the softer of the 2 fast end compounds, and he was worried just, if it does get really hot and sticky today, then he might have some problems as the race went on. You see Michael Andretti there, just a little of understeer in that slower corner. A lot of people complaining that on the concrete, particularly as he was in turn 5 a couple of corners ago. I think he's got looks like he had a gear shift problem. I think he somehow missed a gear, I'm not sure. But there he is. Look at the understeer as he comes through turn 7 and turn 8 here.
Let's just watch him round the lap a little bit. Coming round through the last few corners, around 10 and 11. Building up over 100 miles an hour. This is in 3rd gear. You'll see him change into 4th, and then 5th gear maybe, or he just runs it onto the rev limiter sometimes in 4th, then down to 2nd gear, down to about 60 miles an hour for this right-hander at turn 1. Now he builds up through the speed range again, up over 100 miles an hour through turn 2, and then builds up to 185 miles an hour, 6th gear, as he heads down towards the tight right-hander at the end of the straight. We seem to be listening to the engine from one of the other onboard cameras, sadly, rather than to Michael's, but he carries on through turns 3, 4, and now into turn 5, another 2nd gear corner, down to about 40 miles an hour on the apex there, the slowest speed. But now they're through a tricky section, these double right-handers, and Dario Franchitti was saying this is quite a tricky part of the course, up to 140 miles an hour along here, very narrow, very tight, quite bumpy too. Back down to 2nd gear, 48 miles an hour on the apex of the right-hander. Into the left-hander, this a bit quicker, doing about 75 just here, through the right-hander, building up to 90 miles an hour, and then back through the last corner again and across the start-finish line to complete another lap. Michael Andretti then in 4th position at the moment, and Mark Blundell still our race leader.
Yeah, a note here, one of the cars sounded fairly rough as it came past it last time. I think it was Gualter Salles. More engine problems there for the young Brazilian. Been running in 15th place. He closed up right onto the tail of Alonso Jr. after their stops. It actually switched positions during their pit stops. And there is Gilles de Ferran. He's had problems already today, and it seems now even more problems for the other Brazilian driver. So not too good for Brazilians just at the moment, it seems.
No, well, we've got news that it's a brake. It really is a bad brake problem. The brake's going right down to the floor, and he's shouting no brakes on the radio to his team at the moment, so it really does look bad news for Gilles de Ferran. Let's hope, well, he's just not really going to feature in this race any longer. Mark Blundell leads here, and we're just over half distance. He's driving a superb race so far. Zanardi still in 2nd. Mark Blundell still leads the race here in Toronto, having completed 48 laps now out of the 95. Alex Zanardi in 2nd place, Andre Ribeiro in a fighting 3rd position, looking very good. Michael Andretti in 4th, and Michael's just been told to turn up the boost a little bit, to richen up the mixture a bit, use a bit more fuel. His mileage is looking very good indeed, and over the radio the team have told him to, get on with the program a little bit, and indeed Scott Pruitt behind him has been told that he's not doing so well on the fuel. He's been told to back off a little bit. Pruitt already down in 5th place, so watch out for Michael Andretti in 4th at the moment. We now might expect to see him starting to close the gap between himself and Andre Ribeiro. 5th then Scott Pruitt, 6th is Bobby Rahal, 7th place for Raul Boesel, 8th for Greg Moore, and 9th position for Maurizio Gugeman, 10th place for championship leader Paul Tracy. Mark Blundell has led every lap of this race so far. He's now trying to get past Michel Jourdain Jr. Goes through quite safely on the inside. There was a bit of a gesticulation as he went past. I don't know if he was a little upset.
No, I think that was just a wave of acknowledgement, getting out of the way. He'd been closing up on a couple of laps, and clearly that was a nice easy place to let him past, and did so quite cleanly. So I think just a wave of acknowledgement from Mark Blundell to the young Mexican driver. There is Michael Andretti trying to get past Hiro Matsushita on that fast sweeping corner. Yeah, that's not a wave of thanks. That's quite the opposite.
It is indeed, and Matsushita doing it again. But don't forget that Matsushita actually is a major owner of the Swift company. They build this car that Michael Andretti's driving. I always think that's slightly ironic. There's Hiro out there holding up the guy who's driving his car. Hiro Matsushita doesn't actually drive a Swift himself. He drives a Reynard at the moment. All slightly strange. But anyway, Michael's got past. Matsushita's come into the pits, and Andretti can continue his chase of Andre Ribeiro, which is down to about 2.3 seconds, the gap between them now. Things have settled a little bit up front. There goes Zanardi in second position. Mark Blundell at the bottom of your picture. Top of the picture, Andre Ribeiro. In the background, the black car of Michael Andretti. And once again, Andre Ribeiro impressing us considerably here in the commentary box. Remember how little running he's had in this Reynard chassis over the course of this season. Just a couple of races. This is the second race only of this Reynard that he's been running. And Andre Ribeiro, 31 years old, who took a few wins, won a couple of races last year in the Tasman Lola, as it was last year, with the Honda Power Firestone tyres. Pretty much the same package this year they started out with until the switch to the Reynard. And he won both the Rio 400 and the Michigan race, and in fact took pole position here in Toronto, but it was his teammate Adrian Fernandez who took the victory here last year.
Yes, indeed, and the Tasman Motorsports, as we talked about a little bit earlier on, tremendous success already this weekend, and a great first pit stop by Andre Ribeiro, Steve Reagan leading that crew, and they were able to make up a couple of positions in the pit stop, and now Alex Zanardi is feeling the pressure a little bit. There he goes inside Michel Jourdain Jr. He's actually managed to pull away a little bit from Andre Ribeiro, but he certainly knows Ribeiro's there, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. All three cars at the front of the field, of course, on Firestone tyres. Michael Andretti in fourth is the first of the drivers on Goodyears, then Scott Pruitt in fifth on Firestones, Bobby Rahal Goodyears, and then Firestone, Bozell, Moore and Gugelmin. So pretty interesting, I'd say there. Firestone's looking to have the slight advantage here, as indeed they had last year. Distinct advantage last year. I think Goodyears cut back the deficit this year a little bit, but still Firestone has a better tyre, it seems, at this stage in the race.
Great pictures from on board with Ribeiro. Just enjoy the ride for the moment. Slips past Michel Jourdain down at turn one. Now he can really accelerate again up through the gears and onto the Lakeshore Boulevard straight. We just had more reports of Scott Pruitt, still his team telling him that he's in trouble on fuel mileage, that he's got to lean off the mixture a little bit, so that's not good news for the man running in fifth position so far. There's Michael Andretti, and you can see that he's definitely closing in a little bit on Ribeiro, but he's now got to find a way past Michel Jourdain safely. Jourdain doing a good job, also another man to have switched from Lola to Reynard in recent races. And he's running quite competitively. He's in 15th place, very young man from Mexico, and putting in a good performance so far this year. But Andretti now wants to try and find a way past him quickly. Doesn't want to lose any more time than he has to Andre Ribeiro up ahead there. Let's see whether Andretti can build up the speed sufficiently through these last couple of corners. Jourdain actually pretty fast through there, has to be said. Andretti wasn't quick enough, and that meant that he wasn't able to close up. It's got to be quick through this section now to have more of a chance on the main straight. This time he goes through safely. On the brakes, Jourdain braked a little early, if anything. Michael Andretti takes that the back marker, goes through safely, but now he's got to focus on chasing after Andre Ribeiro a little further ahead.
There is Michael Andretti through the turn 6 there, back to the race leaders.
What's happened here?
Alex Zanardi right on the tail of Mark Blundell. I'm not quite sure whether he got held up. There is Ribeiro behind him and one of the Eagle Toyotas behind that. Certainly the last couple of laps, Zanardi is up the pace. 61.003 last time around. The last 2 laps or so, he's really got to move on and able to pull up a little bit. Here they are at the end of the main straight. Mark Blundell gets it sideways under the braking and goes straight on, doesn't he? Whoa!
That's where he lost the time. That's how Zanardi managed to catch up. The replay of Mark Blundell very nearly losing it going into turn number 3, but he managed to save it. Good driving from Blundell. Didn't throw it away, but now that's put him under pressure from Zanardi. Zanardi, look at this, looking at the inside there, hounding the back of Blundell's car. Now we've really got a race on our hands. We are on lap number 55 out of 95. We've still got about 10 to 15 laps, I would imagine, before the second round of pit stops. And Mark Blundell, from having a fairly comfortable lead and pulling away up front, has now got to do it all over again. And just look at the amount of rubber that's now been thrown off the racing line. That's going to make life difficult for anybody trying to pass. But we've already seen Zanardi passing a great many cars in this race.
Yes, we have indeed, and he hasn't put a foot wrong either. The first chink perhaps of a mistake there from Mark Blundell, and you're going to bet your life that Alex Zanardi is going to try and get through turn 1 and 2 cleanly on this time around. Maybe he can put some more pressure on Mark Blundell as they go down the back straightaway, but
So that's a shame for De Ferran, out of the race, and after a recent run of successful finishes on the podium the last 3 races, it's not to be this time for the Brazilian, but he's still going to be up there in the championship as we move to Michigan next weekend. Mark Blundell crosses the line now. Look, see how he's managed to pull away again from Zanardi a bit, but Ribeiro has caught up a bit, hasn't he?
Yeah, but Mark Blundell has just turned his fastest 2 laps of the race, 60.6 and 60.7 the last 2 laps. Here's a replay, I think, of Mark Blundell getting it sideways under braking there at turn 3, but he kept his cool, kept it under control, kept it off the tyres, and was able to get the pickup off the tyres there and keep Alex Zanardi behind him at the same time. And since then, he's really put his head down. 2 very quick laps from Mark Blundell, established a slight lead again.
Yeah, so he seems to have the car with the pace, and of course the concentration, that's what's got to be kept together here on this track. It's so demanding, and it only takes that slight slip, as we saw there, only a fraction later on the brakes, and of course the tyres beginning to get a little more worn as they go through this second stint, and that means the braking performance not quite as good as it could have been. They actually found something on the car after qualifying yesterday, Jeremy, that wasn't quite right, so that gave them some hope today anyway. It was actually something to do with the stability of the car under braking. They found there was a little bit of air in the hydraulic damper system that looks after the stability of the car under braking, so they were pretty confident coming into today because they knew they could make the car even better than it was yesterday, and he's proving that out there now, isn't he? He's pulled away just a fraction more from Alex Zanardi, but there's no doubt that Zanardi is going to keep him honest all the way through to the end of this race.
Last lap around, Alex Zanardi responding there with a 60.4. He clipped a half a second away from Mark Blundell's lead, so it's really cat and mouse at this stage in the game. 57 laps in the books, and maybe another 12 or 13 or so before their final pit stops, and then it's flat out to the finish from there.
Great stuff, and Blundell from Zanardi, Ribeiro and Andretti, those 4 cars are all very close together, and the winner could really come from any of those. And remember, with the second round of pit stops to come, the pressure is going to be on the teams to get them out cleanly. Here they come past our commentary position again, Mark Blundell and Zanardi, and again, yes, the gap is slightly closer than it had been. Ribeiro goes through, Andretti goes through, and these 4 guys all pushing very hard indeed at the moment.
Yeah, I think Alex Zanardi wants to get as close to Mark Blundell as he can before these pit stops. He has immense confidence in his pit crew. Rob Hill is the crew chief on car number 4. They've pulled in some phenomenal pit stops over the season so far. There's a look at the fuel windows, maybe another 8 or 10 laps to go before they enter the fuel window, which will enable them to make it to the finish on one more pit stop. And Alex Zanardi trying to put the pressure on Mark Blundell's Pac West crew, and it's Butch Winkle who is the crew chief on Mark Blundell's crew, and it's going to be between Butch Winkle and Rob Hill that's going to decide this race. There's two names you probably haven't heard before, but they're part and parcel of IndyCar racing, and it's them that could well make the ultimate decisions in this race. We'll see.
Yes, remember Alex Zanardi's win in Long Beach earlier this year came largely as a result of the quick turnaround from the crew. They managed to get back out in front of De Ferran, it was, they were battling with on that occasion, and Zanardi got in front and then kept that lead position all the way through to the end of the race. So the pressure will begin to mount in the pits, and it will be a tight battle indeed. So these two will now be pushing as hard as possible. Mark will be keen to put in some quick laps to draw out an advantage over Zanardi. Zanardi will be just as anxious to hold Blundell within sight and put the pressure on his pit crew.
There's the first two, Mark Blundell, Alex Zanardi. Here comes Andre Ribeiro in third place, and there is Michael Andretti, who's not losing any ground at all, in fourth position. Mark Blundell turns into turn 5, a nice tidy line, doesn't use all the road on the exit. He's driving relatively conservative at this stage in the game. There's that very fast corner there, up through third and fourth gears there, flat out through here, turn 7, hard on the brakes for turn 8, the right-hander. And Mark Blundell inch perfect there, and holding off Alex Zanardi fairly comfortably, but he certainly hasn't got any room to relax, Ben, has he?
He hasn't, has he? But just think what this is, what this means to Mark Blundell, Jeremy. We've seen him win a race, and it was the first race victory he'd had for so many years, but it's quite different in a way when you're in a situation as he was there, when he drove so well on slick tyres. It was an opportunistic drive. He grabbed that opportunity. Here is quite different. He's leading this race from the start, from the very first lap. He's been in front. He's been in the position to control this race. Such a different position to what he's been in over recent years, in his Grand Prix racing, and in this series last year as well. It's a fantastic position to be in, but there's a lot of responsibility on his shoulders.
There certainly is. You know, he's led 4 races in a row, really, if you count Detroit, which he led for about a mile or so. It wasn't officially credited with leading that race, but certainly was out in front on that last lap, as we well know. He's led all 3 races since then. He's certainly had the upper hand all day here, and driving quite beautifully, and he's very consistent now. His last 6 laps have been around about 60.6, 60.7. Before that, he was lapping in the 61s or even 62s, so they've really upped the pace, these two. And what's interesting, of course, is that Andre Ribeiro and Michael Andretti seem to be able to keep pace with that.
So the battle continues up front, so does it further down. With Bobby Rahal you ride at the moment. Michel Jourdain is just ahead of us in the Herdez car. You can see the rear wing high above the camera position here, and Bobby Rahal down in 6th place at the moment. Raul Boesel is behind him in 7th position, and then Greg Moore in 8th, Guterman 9th, and Paul Tracy 10th. They're getting past Matsushita, just about finding enough space through there. That looks fairly tight. Would have been interesting to see that from a different angle as well. But now we're charging down the Lakeshore Boulevard once again as Bobby Rahal builds up to maximum speed, and the car then having to go under maximum braking here. So initially under braking, they've got a lot of downforce to help them as they hit the brakes first of all, but then of course as they slow down for that very slow corner, the downforce doesn't help them so much. The car begins to squirm around more, and that was really the situation we saw with Mark Blundell, the latter part of the braking just catching him out a few laps ago, which meant that Zanardi caught him.
There's the battle there for 5th, 6th, 7th. There is Scott Pruitt ahead of him. Well, that is actually that's Bobby Rahal with Raul Boesel right behind him, and then Greg Moore behind that. That's the battle for 6th, 7th and 8th. But meantime, Mark Blundell came past here to complete lap 62, and Parker Johnstone was right ahead of him on the road. Now, Parker's not the easiest guy to get around. That's going to be interesting.
Parker Johnstone running in 14th position, so Mark Blundell lapping everyone up to 14th at the moment. But it just shows you again the competitive nature of this series. Not only do we have 4 cars up front pretty close together, and really any one of them could still win this race, then Scott Pruitt, but then you've got the other 4 cars of Rahal, Boesel, Moore and Guterman all close together. Fantastic racing that we're watching here, and we've still got some 33 laps to go. Back to Toronto, Mark Blundell still leads Alex Zanardi. Into the pits comes Raul Boesel, and it sounds as though Michael Andretti may be coming in fairly soon. We're just beginning to see the stops. Guterman's in as well. We've just seen a great stop from Andre Ribeiro, and Jeremy, you reckon that might be quite a critical stop?
Well, it could well be if I think the last couple of laps Mark Blundell is held up a little bit by Parker Johnstone, and I think perhaps he tried to make a move on him. I would surmise that he might have got some rubber on his tyres, some pickup, as they say, some of that loose rubber offline, because his last 2 laps been significantly slower than how he was running before, and that's enabled actually Parker Johnstone to pull ahead of a little bit. But if Andre Ribeiro can come in and make that pit stop and now turn some really quick laps, if these two continue to be held up by Parker Johnstone, that could be very, very significant.
There you are, that's the situation. Andretti's into the pits. This is a key stop as well. The Newman-Haas team going to work. You can expect to see a good pit stop here. Normally these guys are amongst the best. Look how calm it looks as they do that. We can just hear some radio from them as well. Pretty good, pretty good. Just lost a fraction of a second on the getaway there, but Michael Andretti makes a good clean stop and rejoins the race. Now, it's going to be a battle between Andretti, Ribeiro, Zanardi and Blundell. Ribeiro and Andretti have both made good stops.
Yes, and Andre Ribeiro, last lap around 60.862 is his lap time. That's his first flying lap out of the pits. The leaders are doing 61s. He was only a couple of seconds behind. That's going to be very, very interesting. Watch it.
It could be very close when Blundell and Zanardi come out of the pits after their stop, but it's good to see that they've both got past Johnson. There's Paul Tracy in the pits. He came in from around 10th position before the stop started. And let's see, he comes back out. We'll see how it settles down. Still running consistently, but not on the pace. But Johnson has been passed by Blundell and Zanardi. Blundell now has opened up a bit more of a gap over Zanardi, 1.6 seconds as they went past. The question is, when they make their pit stops, will they come out ahead of Andre Ribeiro, who is flying at the moment? We'll try and keep an eye on his progress and whether he gets caught behind anybody as well. Meanwhile, into the pits, Bobby Rahal has just come in.
Yeah, and just, indeed he has. But what's interesting is that Michael Andretti has got past Andre Ribeiro. A phenomenal stop by Michael Andretti's crew there. That's Tim Bumps, who used to be with Penske Racing. A phenomenal stop by the Newman-Haas team. Michael Andretti out ahead of Andre Ribeiro, and they're both turning some fast laps.
Well, that is very interesting indeed. They've got a 4-way battle. We've just got to wait and see what happens on the pit stops with Blundell and Zanardi. Will the two Pac West crew and the Ganassi crew get these cars out ahead of Andretti and also Andre Ribeiro? It's going to be close, but they stay out there at the moment. Now then, this is interesting, although it's on the way into the pit lane, so it shouldn't cause a yellow flag. That's Arndt Meyer, the German driver, and he was running down towards the back of the field. Into the pits comes Scott Pruitt, and Scott Pruitt had moved up to 3rd place with the stops. He's one of the few who haven't stopped yet, and in fact, really, it's just the 2 leaders we're waiting for to come in now. We're on lap number 69.
Yeah, and also Greg Moore has not stopped either. But certainly Andretti is he's been flying right before those pit stops. He was turning some very fast times indeed, and a brilliant stop by the Newman-Haas crew. He's now in 4th place, just Greg Moore ahead of him now, and of course the 2 leaders who are yet to make their pit stop.
This is great stuff. I just don't know what's going to happen amongst these leaders at the moment. Anything at all. And just waiting to see when Blundell comes into the pit. Still not in, but Zanardi is into the pits this time. Alex Zanardi comes down the pit lane. Now this is an absolutely crucial pit stop for the Ganassi team. We've seen some great performances so far this year from them. We also saw a bit of a disaster in Cleveland last week, but that was down to miscommunication. We could get a yellow. Brian Herter is off at the side of the track, although hopefully they'll be able to get that car cleared away, we hope, without going to a full course yellow. Zanardi into the pit lane. Let's see how long it takes. Good stop, 10.3 seconds. Now then, is he going to get out in front of Andretti? Yes, he is. Zanardi is out ahead of Andretti and Ribeiro, so he's well placed. But what can Mark Blundell do now?
You know, that even if there is a full course yellow, there's Greg Moore off the road.
Greg Moore, it's got to be a full course yellow now. This could help or not.
No, it really actually won't make any difference, because the pits, unlike on the ovals, the pits are actually open. They don't close the pits like they do on the ovals. So Mark Blundell will be able to dive straight into the pits, which I'm sure he will do this time around. Actually, he doesn't. There he goes past the start-finish line. As long as there isn't a full course yellow on this lap, he will be able to run around at maximum racing speed. But you know, as he goes past that incident down there in turn 2, he's going to lose time, and I'm pretty surprised that the Pac West crew, there is Brian Herter losing it under braking for turn 3. Greg Moore, I think, was off in turn 2, and with those yellow flags out, there is Greg Moore trying to get around the outside. Is that Alex Zanardi, isn't it?
I think it is.
And didn't he clip him? He seemed to clip his right front tyre.
Yeah, the left front. He hit Zanardi's left front. Now, what was Moore thinking of there? I mean, I know Zanardi just come out of the pits, but that was a remarkably overly brave thing to do, I would say, from Greg Moore in that case. There was no way that was going to work. Zanardi was never going to know he was there. Greg Moore's waving at him, but I don't really know what he expected.
Well, he was clearly around the outside. Zanardi was on cold tyres. Here is the full course caution. Zanardi was on cold tyres, and Moore has, immense momentum on him going into that corner. So, as far as he's concerned, it's up to Zanardi to get out of the way and let him go. But of course, Alex Zanardi won't see it. Here is Mark Blundell into the pits. This is the pit stop that'll count.
We've gone full course yellow with no great surprise there, and Blundell now into the pits. Are they going to get him out ahead of Alex Zanardi? This is where it all counts for the Pac West team. Tyres come off, tyres go on. It's methanol fuel that goes aboard, remember. We're watching to see where Zanardi is on track. Is he going to come out in front? I think he is. It's a good stop from Blundell and the Pac West crew. Blundell comes back out onto the circuit. I can see Zanardi now coming past us. Blundell comes back out in front, and Zanardi comes through in second position. Andretti in third place, and there's going to be quite a battle when this race goes green once again. But Blundell has managed to get out in front of them and retain his lead here in Toronto. Greg Moore is the car that's damaged. He's out of the race, but Blundell still leads. Welcome back to Toronto as we look at another replay. Now, this is the situation. Zanardi come out of the pits. Moore trying to come around the outside. Now, this is the point where contact was made. Well, I suppose you could say, yes, that Zanardi should have been holding it tighter. He must have been aware, as you said, in fact, Jeremy, there, of how quickly Moore was coming down on him. And the difference in speeds, of course, quite major with Zanardi only just coming out of the pits. He seemed to leave Moore a certain amount of room, but then they just came together at the end.
Yeah, he did, didn't he? And well, it's tough to make a call on that one, really, but I suppose just a racing incident. But Greg Moore, I mean, he was on hot tyres.
Yeah.
Not much he could do about it. He was just taking his line through the corner. He couldn't, from that position, slot in behind Zanardi, clearly. He had to make the pass, and he was committed to making the pass. And Alex Zanardi just clipped his left front hit Moore's right rear wheel, and that's all she wrote for poor old Greg Moore. And it's going to be interesting to see whether there's any damage on the left front of Alex Zanardi's car. I think a lucky break for the Italian, I'd say, that situation.
Yes, it doesn't look as though it's bent anything. Meanwhile, Mark Blundell there in the Motorola car still leads this race, although he might not be at the head of this queue. Don't worry about that. There are other lapped cars at the front of the queue behind the pace car, but Blundell is the race leader. Second position is Zanardi, and you can see there's several cars between them, and that will help Blundell's cause when this gets going once again. Andretti third, Ribeiro in fourth place. You can just see them at the top of the picture. And behind them, Scott Pruitt in fifth. Guterman's moved up to sixth. So Guterman's gained quite a lot from that last round of pit stops, actually. He was running down just outside the top 10 most of the time, but he's gained a bit there. Bozell seventh. Ray Hall has dropped again. He's down to eighth place now. Remember, he was running third in the early stages of this race. Behind him is Jimmy Vasser in ninth. Paul Tracy stayed in 10th all day. It doesn't seem to make much difference whether he makes pit stops, doesn't make pit stops, or do whatever. He seems to have been holding on to 10th just about all day here. And behind him is Christian Fittipaldi, Parker Johnston, Michel Jourdain and Adrian Fernandez. We just heard reports on the radio to the Mark Blundell from the Pac West team. They're just warning him about the cold tyres that he'll be on. And you can also see down there's some bit of track cleaning going on as well. They're just trying to get rid of some of these marbles. And you can just see how much these softer tyres that have been brought to the Toronto circuit by both Goodyear and Firestone have been disintegrating gradually as we've gone through this race.
Yes, look at all that stuff there. There goes the Toronto Metro City sweeper to try and get rid of some of that stuff, but it's a losing battle, really. And another 2 or 3 laps after they go green, there'll be quite a few marbles, as they call them, back out there. So I don't think it'll make a lot of difference, but at least make an effort to try and clean up the track a little bit.
Yes, that's right. Well, the pace car leads them round. Mark Blundell is now within some 21 laps of taking his second win of the season. Yellow flag still being waved at the moment, but we think they'll be going green fairly soon. There's Michael Andretti, Andre Ribeiro. Watch out for their progress as we get green flag racing. Then there's a bit of a gap back. Next one actually on the lap is Scott Pruitt, and he's quite a long way back. A lot of cars between the back of Andre Ribeiro's car And we should hopefully get a chance to hear from Greg Moore. Let's hear from Greg Moore in the pits.
Well, not at all. I mean, anytime you end up in the fence during a race where you're doing not too badly, because it's such a stupid incident, it's just, it's frustrating, that's for sure.
Do some play-by-play of it. What happened?
Zanardi was coming out of the pits on really cold tires, and I had the racing line. I went into turn 1. He tried to go in just as deep as I did, and he was on cold tires, and his left front hit my right rear tire, put me up into the wall, and the race was over. It's just a stupid incident.
Frustrating because you were scrapping all weekend. You didn't qualify that well, at least early in the weekend, but you came back, and you really were in a position to do something here.
Yeah, we were in a position to finish in the top 5 again. I don't think we had a first-place car, but it's just unfortunate that a stupid incident like this happens.
I know your fans feel as bad as you do. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks.
Yes, disappointment for the Canadians here this weekend. They see their top man now, Paul Tracy, down in 10th place. And interesting to hear from the radio of the Newman Haas crew that Michael Andretti's been told don't worry about saving fuel anymore. And in fact, I think most of the guys will be hearing that now, because this yellow flag period, the fueling already done recently. There's another look at that incident between Greg Moore and Zanardi. Just Zanardi letting it run a little bit too wide, and as Greg Moore said, perhaps Zanardi tried to go in a bit quick. He was almost the car had to run wide because he tried to go in there quick, and there was inevitable contact.
Yeah, I think Greg Moore was running as wide as he could through that corner. You could see there, if you look closely, as the cars are coming out of the corner, Greg Moore was definitely off to the left of the preferred line there, and any farther out and he'd have hit the wall on his own.
Yeah.
So not left any room at all there by Alex Zanardi.
Yeah, so I think a few words between Greg Moore and Alex Zanardi at the end of this race, but Zanardi has survived. He still runs in second position, remember, and he's Mark Blundell's main threat as we go through the rest of this race. But as I say, interesting to see. All of those drivers will be told they can whack up to full rich on the mixture. That means that they'll get full power from their engines for the last part of this race. Some 20 laps to go, and that'll be flat out racing. But with some back markers in there as well, it could make life very, very exciting in the closing stages of this round 12 of the PPG Kart World Series. To see Zanardi sliding the car a little bit through the corners, trying to keep a little bit of heat in the rear tyres as they tour around fairly slowly behind the pace car. And these tyres really do cool down a great deal. It makes life difficult on the restart, and there's a lot of skill involved, and Andretti's one of the top guys, it has to be said, for going quickly on cold tyres. And you watch out for him once this does go green again. We can see the track cleaner just coming past our commentary box at the moment. That's coming out of turn 11, doing a bit of sweeping.
That's right, and they've also waved those cars that between the pace car and the race leader. They have waved past the pace car. They will now run around to pick up position at the back of the pack. So when we do go green, which I would anticipate probably in a lap or two, then the race leader will be at the front of the pack. That, of course, is Mark Blundell, and right behind him, Alex Zanardi. Then there's a couple of lap cars. Actually, they're both
no damage done in that situation, guys.
All-American Racers cars. I tell a lie. It's Christian Fittipaldi who is right behind the race leader.
The charge we saw earlier, Alex Zanardi is about to go into part 2 here any moment.
So just a little bit of news from the pit lane there, and we can just hopefully, I can see the kart safety team still doing a bit of clearing up just out of turn 11 here at the moment. They're just blowing the track to try and clean it up somewhat. And there you are, there's the sweeper trying to get all these rubber bits out of the way, and that will hopefully open up the line for a bit more overtaking once the green flag waves.
Yeah, sorry about that, talking over the top there. I was concentrating on who that was, who was actually right behind Mark Blundell. It is in fact Christian Fittipaldi's car. And Christian, of course, is a lap down to the leaders, but there's his car, and then behind him the two All-American Racers cars of P.J. Jones and Juan Fangio. Then it's Alex Zanardi and Michael Andretti and Andre Ribeiro. That, of course, is the battle for second place. So Mark Blundell here will have a nice little cushion of 3 cars, and he'll be he'll find that very welcoming indeed. I know he won't have to push quite so hard. He won't have to worry, at least for a few laps, until Zanardi can get past those other guys, and maybe Mark can make a little bit of a break here and make full use of that.
Yes, and he won't, as you say, he won't have to worry so much about being on cold tyres. He doesn't need to be a real hero, does he, on the first lap? He can allow the tyres to build up temperature on the opening lap, and then he can really go for for it and try and pull away. In the meantime, Zanardi will still be trying to find a way past those slower cars. So it does set things up well for Mark Blundell here, but it's still a tough situation. Leading any race is a tough situation, but he's been in control all the way from the start of this race, the start that saw the incident between Dario Franchitti and Bobby Rahal. Franchitti started from pole position, remember. Rahal tried to squeeze down the inside of him into turn one. It ended in contact. Franchitti spinning in front of everybody. Rahal also slowed a little bit, but not too much, and Fittipaldi getting caught out in that. Franchitti tried to fight his way back up through the field, but at the end of the day went off just after turn three. So disappointment for Franchitti, but for Mark Blundell, who joined him on the front row after qualifying second fastest yesterday, things going absolutely perfectly so far, and he's just got to hope that it will go just as well for the remaining 18 laps. The sweeper is just going through this section of track that they're coming into now, turns 1 and 2, and we've been told it's going to be pulling off after that. Don't worry, that's not Mark, that's one of his crew members down. Oh, in fact, that's yes, that's the dummy that they've got. So it's I've seen that around. It's a dummy that they've sort of put out. I don't quite know why. It's for the sponsors, I think, for Motorola that they use this thing. It got stolen, I remember, on one of the races. Somebody actually disappeared with it. It was in the trunk of a car. The car got stolen and they lost their dummy. But never mind, that it has been recovered. Michael Andretti's been complaining over the radio, and he wants to know when they're going green. He's getting bored of sitting down there. He wants to know when this race is going to get underway, because he doesn't want too many laps behind the pace car. He needs all those laps to try and catch up to race leader Mark Blundell, and that's the opportunity he wants.
It is indeed, particularly with those slower cars in front of Alex Zanardi. I think Alex Zanardi better watch his mirrors pretty closely going down there into turn one. The Toyotas, of course, don't have the horsepower of the Honda engine or the Ford that Alex Zanardi and Michael Andretti respectively have aboard their cars, and Michael Andretti is going to try and make a really good exit out of turn 11 right in front of us, and he's going to try and make a pass at the end of the front stretch, and if he can't make a pass down there, he's going to try and do it in turn 3. So Alex Zanardi is the one who's really got his hands full, I'd say, the next lap or two.
Well, here we go, Jeremy. We're about to get the green flag coming out again. So Mark Blundell has got 18 laps to go here to the checkered flag, and he's got to try and keep control of all this with Zanardi, Andretti, Ribeiro all chasing. Out of the last couple of corners, Mark Blundell leads them through. He can be a bit cautious on the power coming out of here and not worry too much about the guys behind him, because it's Christian Fittipaldi who is been lapped already, so he's not going to worry too much about Fittipaldi. Watch out for Zanardi. Zanardi already getting past one of those slower cars. Michael Andretti will be looking to do the same as they come out of turn number 1. Blundell goes through, then the slower car, Zanardi, then Andretti just tucked in behind the other of the Toyota powered machines. There goes Andretti as Fittipaldi stays right behind Blundell. Blundell says, oi, no, you don't dare come down the inside of me. I'm staying up front. Of course, for Fittipaldi, it's still within his interest to try and get back onto the lead lap, get past Blundell.
Apart from anything else, it gets him back on the lead lap, and then of course it might help Michael Andretti if he can get past Alex Zanardi. Maybe Christian can play his part in this as well, as he's trying to make a position up for himself, get him back onto the lead lap. He's running 11th at the moment, as we're on board there with Andre Ribeiro and Michael Andretti right ahead of Ribeiro, and Michael Andretti's still stuck behind that Toyota car. That certainly is a surprise to me. Michael Andretti's car is sliding around a lot. Goodyear tires perhaps just not coming in quite so well as the Firstones considerably.
Yes, good point, Jeremy. The Goodyear tyre perhaps needing a few more laps to get more heat into the tyre before it's fully up to working temperature. Look at this, Ribeiro's taking advantage of that to get down the inside, and Andretti could do nothing about it. Great racing, and the Brazilian Andre Ribeiro goes up into 3rd position. He goes chasing after Alex Zanardi, and it is 3 Firestone cars up front now, with Blundell leading. Zanardi now right behind Fittipaldi. There's Fittipaldi in the Budweiser car, then it's Alex Zanardi in the Target machine right behind him, but remember, it's Zanardi who's actually in 2nd place, and he's got to find a way past the lapped car of Christian Fittipaldi.
Mark Blundell still in a great position here. That lap car between himself, a little bit of a buffer between himself and that charging Italian. Great news for Mark Blundell. He thinks, he reckons he's got a good advantage over Christian Fittipaldi. He's just going to play it cool, not push too hard too soon here, maintain just enough of an edge that Christian Fittipaldi doesn't get a sniff of getting past him. He'll be in great shape.
He will indeed, and Fittipaldi running very quick lap times now as he comes across the line in 11th place. Blundell just that slight advantage, 1.4 seconds the gap to Zanardi, then Ribeiro, and then Michael Andretti. I wonder if we're going to see Michael pick up the pace a bit more. or whether these Goodyear tyres just don't quite have the edge in the closing stages of the race. We saw Bobby Rahal drop back earlier on in the race on the Goodyears, and Andretti, so it looks like he's getting on the radio a bit there to talk to his pit crew a little bit. I don't know if there's an awful lot he can do about improving the performance of the car in the closing stages. Don't really worry about the pit window too much. It's the checkered flag that we're worried about more than the pit window. They've got 15 laps to go till the checkered flag comes out. They should be okay on fuel.
Yeah, perhaps the only significance of that is that Ribeiro, of course, has been out another 5 or 6 laps longer on his tyres. But the Firestone tyres seem to be pretty consistent. We saw in the second stint of the race that Blundell and Zanardi, well, just about everybody, but those two in particular, were able to run some very fast laps, even after 25, 30 laps on those tyres. So I don't think that's really a major factor at all. And certainly pit stops are out of play now. We've made all the pit stops we're going to make, and it's a flat-out race to the finish.
The other thing, I suppose, is that Ribeiro may possibly have to lean off the fuel mixture, but with the yellow flag that we've had, it's fairly unlikely. He should be okay right the way through to that checkered flag now. Gugelmin is hounding the back of Scott Pruett's car, and that's the battle for 5th place. Battle for 5th, and meanwhile behind them, Jimmy Vasser and Raul Boesel.
Yeah, Vasser actually got past Boesel on that lap, so Jimmy Vasser on a bit of a charge. He has moved up a couple of places now because he got past Bobby Rahal at the restart, and another position also for Jimmy Vasser. So next in his sights will be that battle. There it is, there's Scott Pruett and Mauricio Gugelmin, and in the back of that picture, going through the picture now, is Jimmy Vasser.
So Vasser, last year's champion, looking to improve position, get a few more points here. Parker Johnson is just ahead of them.
Yeah, he's a lap down. He's in 12th place right now, so he's a lap down out of the picture. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, Mark Blundell is actually pulled away a little bit from Alex Zanardi.
Good stuff, 1.4 seconds, the gap as they came around last time, but of course Zanardi still behind Fittipaldi.
I think he might have got past him actually. I didn't quite see it. I think he might have got past Christian Fittipaldi. He now has clear sailing, so we'll see what he can do there. Meanwhile, there's that great battle for 5th, 6th and 7th on board with Jimmy Vasser in 7th place. He's had a horrible couple of races, the last 2 he hasn't scored points. That's the first time in more than 2 years that he hadn't scored any points at all, or hadn't finished a race at least, and he's trying to get himself back on track here with a good finish. There they are. They still can't get past Parker Johnson, can they?
They can't, and it's given Gugelmin another opportunity to try and squeeze past Scott Pruett. Can't do it there, and Jimmy Vasser right in behind them as well, looking for the opportunity. Vasser, the 31-year-old from California, who took the title with such a consistent run of success last year. 4 victories along the way, most of them in the early part of the season, and then just kept scoring consistently all the way to the end of the championship. But it still took him right up to the last race when he finished in 4th place at Laguna Seca to secure the title. This year it hasn't been quite as good for him, but still a very consistent run throughout most of the season, as Jeremy mentioned, just not quite showing the sort of pace that he needs to be up front in the championship. A few more cars getting involved in this now that they're going to have to get past as well. Scott Pruett still stays ahead of Mauricio Gugelmin. Meanwhile, just to tell you, Blundell still ahead of Zanardi on the last lap by 1.1 seconds. And there, Juan Fangio waving Parker Johnston past. But Gugelmin now has got alongside Scott Pruett. But I don't know whether he's going to be able to do much about it because the other cars are there. Vasser is in place, but he also didn't try and do anything too heroic. It could have taken them all off. So it's still the same situation. Still Parker Johnston, who's a lap down on the others. He's in 12th place as these others fight for 5th position.
Juan Fangio doing a good job of keeping out of the way. That professional, thorough professional is Juan Fangio. Keeps out of the way as going into that tight hairpin corner. Meanwhile, Mark Blundell flashes across the line. He pulls out a good second over Alex Zanardi that lap. 2.4 seconds between 1st and 2nd now. Onto Ribeiro, another 3.9 seconds behind in 3rd place. And Michael Andretti doesn't seem to be able to do too much about Ribeiro. He's another couple of seconds back in 4th place.
60.2 the lap from Mark Blundell on that last one. That's a very quick lap. Michael Andretti, team are telling him his car's as fast as anybody, but he wasn't on the last lap. He did a 60.8, 0.6 of a second slower than race leader Blundell is doing at the moment, and that's not going to be enough to close up the gap. Here we go. Scott Pruett now looking for a way past Parker Johnston. Doesn't really look that committed though, does he, down the inside? He sort of has a look, but doesn't really go for it. And Parker Johnston still stays ahead of this little group. Perhaps Pruett's not too bothered at the moment, so as long as he can keep Gugelmin behind him, it doesn't really matter about getting past Johnston.
No, I don't think Scott Pruitt has anything for any of the 4 cars in front of him. He certainly hasn't shown it the rest of the weekend. So as long as he can maintain 5th place, that'll get his championship challenge back on track as well, because he's had a bit of bad luck the last couple of races. So Scott Pruitt will be happy to be running in 5th. He'd much prefer to be running at the front, of course, but he knows he doesn't have a car to do that today. 5th place will do just fine. Take it easy, take it steady, don't do anything silly.
Reports on radio that he's getting a bit frustrated, though, having said that, behind Parker Johnston. He's asking the team to get on the radio to the CART officials and get Johnston out of the way. He doesn't want this to distract him as much as it is at the moment. On board with Bobby Rahal, meanwhile, who's dropped down to 9th place. It's been a race of going steadily backwards for Rahal, combination of track pace and pit stops, and he's now just ahead of Paul Tracy there, who's still running in 10th place. Remember, Tracy is our championship leader on 106 points at the moment. He'll only score 3 points if he stays in this 10th place, which will take him on to 109 points. Of the main front runners in the championship, it's Michael Andretti who will score well. 4th place would give him some 12 points and put him on 103, but that would still mean that Tracy would lead the championship as they go to Michigan next week, and the gap would be down to just 6 points. But for Andretti, it really is important to try and get onto the podium here, try and score a few more points and keep the pressure on Paul Tracy, who's been struggling just over the last few races. There is Michael Andretti, still in touch with Andre Ribeiro, but still not able to really close up that gap. And of course, don't forget, Zanardi's pretty well up. He's running in 2nd place. He would go to 106 points. So again, he would actually be then tied virtually, well, no, just in between Tracy and Andretti, and we would get such a close situation with just 3 points between the championship leader, 2nd place man Zanardi, and another 3 points back to Michael Andretti in 3rd. And after 12 rounds of the championship, Jeremy, just shows how close it all is. 11 rounds of the championship, yes.
Yeah, and here comes Mark Blundell's pass here. That's 87 laps in the books now for Mark Blundell. He's got a comfortable lead over Alex Zanardi, and 8 laps to go is all that remains between Mark Blundell and his 2nd PPG Kart World Series victory. Dare I say it.
Dare you say it? Well, let's see. He's already had 1 win so far this year in that dramatic finale in Portland in the wet weather, when he stormed through on the last lap to grab the victory from Gilles de Ferran, with Raul Boesel in close attendance as well. Scott Pruitt still complaining bitterly on the radio about Parker Johnston, really getting very irate indeed, but there's nothing much changing.
Meanwhile, Alex Zanardi, 2.6 seconds again. Now, he took a half a second off Mark Blundell that time around. Alex Zanardi's last lap, 59.732. That's one of the fastest laps of the race. And we're on board there with Jimmy Vasser as he sets sail after these 2 in front of him, and he's still embroiled in that battle there for 5th, 6th and 7th places.
But at last Parker Johnston's got out of their way, Vasser as well as the other 2 getting past him, so at least they don't have to worry too much about the green and white car that was playing the game ahead of them. We're just hearing reports that Mark Blundell had a little bit of a problem with his gearbox earlier on in the race. It just jumped out of gear. Apparently it's all running okay at the moment, though. Meanwhile, Zanardi's been told to really go for it, and they're both, look at that, Jeremy, the times they're doing now. They are both suddenly pushing very hard.
They certainly are. They've really upped the pace there, and 59.625 Mark Blundell, that's his fastest lap by a long way, and the gap maintained there, 2.5 seconds. They're pulling away from Andre Ribeiro. In the meantime, Christian Fittipaldi is still between those 2 on the racetrack. He's running 3rd on the road, out of sight of these 2. There is Alex Zanardi in pursuit of the race leader. Here he is, Mark Blundell.
The gap has closed slightly again, hasn't it? We've still got 7 laps to go, and they're coming around to make it just 6 laps to go at the end of this one. This is across the start-finish line, just down the end of the straight. There they go across the line. Blundell crosses it, and Zanardi crosses it. 1.9 of the gap between the 2 of them. Nothing to choose between them, really, although Zanardi again was a fraction faster on that lap. His best lap then was a 59.2. Blundell did a 59.8, so Zanardi still just edging ever so much closer to Mark Blundell.
And these 2 in a class of their own. They're the only 2 people lapping in the 59-second range. 59.2, that's a very fast lap indeed by Alex Zanardi. And Mark Blundell's got his hands full, but Andre Ribeiro falling back in 3rd place, and Michael Andretti unable to make it really a challenge on, there is Andre Ribeiro, 3rd place, the LCI Marlboro car. Reynard Honda, of course, for the last couple of races, taken over from the Lola, which was so disappointing this season. There is Michael Andretti in 4th place, sliding the tail of the car.
Andretti is pumped up to take that final podium finish here in Toronto. After taking 5 wins in 10 starts on this track, he really would like to get on the podium once again. Has a lot of support amongst the fans here, and the fans, as you can see on this pit straight, we've got grandstands on both sides of the track, hospitality areas. There's a great atmosphere down this start-finish straight. The crowd really get behind the race, and they're right over the top of the pit, so they cheer the drivers at any opportunity when they see them out of the car. It's a great atmosphere and building up to a thrilling climax as Mark Blundell still leads, but he's got that age-old problem now of getting past Hiro Matsushita.
Get out of the way, Hiro. Watch your mirrors. There goes Mark Blundell. Looks to the inside and Hiro shuts the door on him. And now he's got to go through these 2 quick corners where Hiro is hopelessly slow.
And look how close Zanardi's got to the back of Mark Blundell's car now. Matsushita holding up Blundell once again, and again he's not able to get past.
What is the guy doing? He closed the door dramatically.
At last he waves him through. He has waved him through, and Blundell goes past, but all that advantage has suddenly vanished once again, and Blundell now with some 4 laps to go as he goes across the line has got to do it all again. Well, it's keeping him focused, isn't it? He's got to keep pushing hard, but the tyres are getting more worn now. The car is beginning to feel the 92 laps that they've done already. He's got to keep it together for the remainder.
This is where experience tells. Mark Blundell was getting awfully frustrated behind Hiro Matsushita. He's now got a clear road in front of him. He cannot make a mistake.
He's got to keep his head together there. A little bit sideways out of there. Zanardi will take advantage of that if he possibly can. Ribeiro still in 3rd place, but don't worry about him. He's some 6.6 seconds behind the 2 battling for the lead. He's not really in the game. His main worry is how close Michael Andretti is, but that gap has remained pretty much constant throughout the last couple of laps. So it's all about the battle for the lead. Mark Blundell versus Alex Zanardi in the closing stages. And still it remains at about 2 or 3 car lengths. They're coming around to complete another lap of this 1.8 mile street track that has shown us such a great race today. Lots of overtaking, lots of drama, and very few yellow flags. They really behaved themselves here this afternoon, and just 3 laps to go. Blundell just with the edge over Alex Zanardi.
Impeccable lines from both of them there. You can see all the marbles offline. There's a good wide strip though on the main straightaway here on Lakeshore Boulevard alongside Lake Ontario, and here comes it into the braking area. Mark Blundell deep into the braking area, nice and smooth, no looking up at brakes. Alex Zanardi meanwhile just slides a little bit wide, doesn't he? Misses the apex as we watch Andre Ribeiro getting past Hiro Matsushita, who's a little bit more accommodating this time.
Just as well. I'm surprised they haven't brought him in yet after that little incident with Mark Blundell. Andretti still in 4th place, but it doesn't look like he's going to be able to do very much, and in fact the team is saying, well, Michael, you might as well just hold on to 4th. There's not much else you're going to be able to do. Look, Mark has pulled away again from Zanardi.
Yeah, championship for positions there for Michael Andretti. And last lap around, Mark Blundell 59.185. That's a great qualifying time. That would have put him in the top half dozen in the grid. 4th on the grid, that would have put him. Next lap around, there he goes past again. 93 laps in the books, 59.2. Brilliant by Mark Blundell.
He is really charging, and as you say, doing qualifying times, let alone race times here. The car, of course, light on fuel now at the end of the race. Just 2 laps to go, but not exactly a new set of tyres. Partly the reduction in temperatures. We've gone overcast now. We started off bright and sunny. We've got cloud cover everywhere. The temperatures dropped somewhat, but even so, very fast times indeed as Ribeiro comes through in 3rd place. Andretti has got past Hiro Matsushita now in 4th position. 5th is still Pruitt, 6th Guterman, 7th Vassar, 8th is Bozell, 9th is Rahal, 10th place for Paul Tracy, and the last 2 in the points at the moment are Christian Fittipaldi in 11th and Parker Johnston in 12th place. But we've just got over a lap to do. A little bit more than a lap as we wait for Blundell to come past us. And I'm looking there, you can see him out of turn 11, going on to the last lap. He'll get the white flag this time. There it is being waved at the start-finish line. Mark Blundell just has to do another 1.8 miles. Let's hope it all holds together. Remember Detroit. Remember how it all went wrong within sight of the checkered flag.
That's Brian Herter. Good job, Brian Herter. Smart young man. He knows he's not in a battle for position. Right out of the way there. Gets himself on the marbles. He'll have a horrible time for the next lap. But Mark Blundell, clear road. Alex Zanardi trying as hard as he can. 59.2 last time around. Pulled a couple of tenths off Mark Blundell, but that's not going to be enough. And if Mark Blundell is clean this last half a lap.
He's just got to keep it clean, as you say. No mistakes from Blundell, and Zanardi won't have a chance. They've gone past all the main overtaking opportunities here. Zanardi will be looking to the points as well. Remember, he's right up there in the championship chase. 2nd place will be good for him. But Mark Blundell is now coming through the last couple of corners, through the right-hander, through the left, through the right-hander at turn number 10, the sweeping left-hander at turn number 11. Mark Blundell is going to win the second race of the year in the PPG Kart World Series. Blundell wins it. Zanardi finishes in second place. Ribeiro comes through to take third, and we wait for Michael Andretti to take fourth place, and that's the way it's going to finish. There is Ribeiro coming across the line in third, Andretti in fourth, Pruitt will be in fifth, and Guterman in sixth place. But what a drive from Mark Blundell. The celebrations in the Pac West Cap after the victory in Portland. It's victory again for Blundell. A superb achievement, this time from the front the whole way. He led every single lap except on the pit stops.
Except during the pit stops. A flawless drive. Well, one little blemish, wasn't there? One tiny little mistake. Here it was in turn 3 on that very corner. But when it mattered, Mark Blundell was able to keep his cool, keep the intense pressure from Alex Zanardi in his mirrors, and what a great drive by both these drivers. I mean, a tremendous race, and boy, Mark Blundell deserved that drive.
He did. A fantastic achievement from Blundell. Zanardi going well for the championship though, and that important to him. Bobby Rahal coming through. He finished in 9th position in the end. And Paul Tracy finished in 10th place. So Paul will still just retain the championship lead, but it really means that things are closing up wonderfully in this series, and it's continuing an incredibly close season. We've seen all of the race finishes this year. The most we've seen is just under 4 seconds as a winning margin. Today, again, the winning margin 0.6 of a second, and there are now just 6 points separating the top 3 drivers in the championship. Tracy, who leads the series on 109, Zanardi second on 106, and Michael Andretti third on 103. And we really couldn't ask for much more than that in terms of a competitive racing championship that we have here in the United States. There, the top 6 places. Blundell the winner from Zanardi and Ribeiro, and Parker Johnston getting the final point in 12th place. So the final positions there, disappointment of course today for Dario Franchitti, and have to sympathise with him. But there down in the pits, Mark Blundell and Alex Zanardi, after putting on a tremendous display of competitive racing throughout the afternoon. Great drive from Zanardi. Remember, he had to fight his way up from 6th place on the grid to get into second, and he pushed Mark Blundell as hard as he could, but there wasn't quite the chink in the armour that he was looking for. And you can see Mark's been working hard, throwing the water around a bit, and it's been hard work out there on track, but that is the best drive that we've seen from Mark Blundell for a good long time, I think.
He's going to be a factor for the rest of this season, and no question about it. I think he's 10th in the points now, up with this victory here, plus the point for most laps led as well. And let's have a word with Mark Blundell.
Yes, hopefully we'll hear something from him down there. Get a microphone in front of him. It's quite a collection of people all trying to hear from Blundell, and you can just see the delight on his face. And this one, I think, sinking in a little quicker than the win in Portland, which of course was such a surprise to him. He never even knew he'd won in Portland. This time he knew very well that as he crossed the line, he was the winner. Twice winner this year, and that's a pretty good achievement. We've only had a few drivers win more than one. We've had Paul Tracy win 3 this year, Alex Zanardi, who's won 2 races, and Greg Moore, who's won 2, and now Mark Blundell joins that list as well, having won 2 races. Another win for Faster and Tars as well. You know, this is I think Faster and Tars led every single lap of this race, and that's the first time this season that Faster and Goodyear have not led the race at one point, one stage or another during the race. So that's pretty interesting. Faster dominant here last year, and clearly the best tyre this weekend as well. Michael Andretti was the best of the Goodyear runners in 4th place, and but he wasn't able to have anything for those 3 in front of him, was he? There is Mark Blundell, and there's a happy man. Yeah, great news, and to all his fans who are watching this back in England, well, it's just a great day again for Mark Blundell. What a fabulous achievement. The former Grand Prix driver came over here, had such a tough season last year, Jeremy, particularly that big accident that he suffered in Brazil. He's come back from that. He shows such resilience and bravery as well to come back from an accident like that, and here he is winning 2 races this year. Certainly, you know, he will acknowledge how much of a confidence knocker that was. Here's Mark Blundell.
must have been very close. It was very close, but then the whole rest of the race was under big time pressure from various sides, especially Denard. Yeah, I mean, we had some a little bit of pressure out there at the times. I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed with a couple of people out there because they didn't read the flag.
Well, we seem to be not quite picking up the sound on that one as well as we would like. Hopefully we'll get another chance in a moment to hear from Mark Blundell and get a slightly clearer interview for you. So sorry about that, apologies. Of course, we'd all love to hear from Mark and see exactly what he's got to say about that victory. And hopefully we will get another chance in a few minutes to hear from the winner of the race here in Toronto. Of course, next week, Jeremy, we've got quite a different challenge, haven't we? But we're going to a track that Mark is actually very keen on. He's had a couple of good results at the Michigan International Speedway. Yeah,
he found that an eye-opener last year. That was really his first race back after that horrible crash in Brazil, and he drove absolutely superbly. He and Mauricio Gugelmin with their supposedly underpowered Ford Cosworth XB cars last year, but they both ran very, very strongly all day, and Mark Blundell, he liked it. It's an eye-opener, 230 miles an hour, wheel to wheel. That's a new experience for Mark Blundell, even though he's been around the block a time or two. But he took to it like a duck to water, as of course did Nigel Mansell 3 or 4 years ago when he came over here, won the championship and won that race at his first attempt as well. And it's great to see how this boost of confidence that victory gave him in Portland has just turned his career around, it seems. I mean, he's now the man to watch, isn't he?
He is indeed. Well, we're running out of transmission time, I'm afraid, so it doesn't look as though we're going to get a good chance to hear from Mark. If you join us next week, we'll bring you a full interview with Mark Blundell as we just look at the points once again. There's just, as you can see, just those 3 points between Tracy and Zanardi, another 3 between Zanardi and Andretti. Fantastically close in the championship now. It really is anybody's title, and it's likely to go all the way to the wire at the end of September on the Fontana Super Speedway, the new track that will be joining the championship this year. So we've really got a great race set up for next weekend in Michigan. I hope you can join us. We've got full coverage on all 3 days of the event next week. We'll be bringing you up to date with the interviews, the stories of the weekend, and hopefully bring you everything that's happening. Mark Blundell, the happy man from Toronto, though, absolutely delighted with his 2nd win of the season. And
first all UK
I hope you've enjoyed.
Toronto.
I hope you've enjoyed it. Let's just see if we can hear this quickly.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm really happy. It was a great race. We led from the start there and had a few bits of pressure on us throughout the race. A couple of people weren't that pleasant out there in terms of getting by them, and that could have been very costly to us, and I'm a little bit disappointed. But overall, team gave me a great car. Engine was great. Tyres were good. Fantastic.
You're tight on time. 2 things. Zanardi really put the heat on you. He wasn't knocking on the back door. He was trying to kick it down.
Yeah, he tried to knock it down, but we kept it closed, didn't we? I mean, we did a good job.
And the gearbox jumped out of gear, but no problem, obviously.
Yeah, it jumped out of gear once, which was a bit frustrating because it made us run into the corner, but we got it all back together again.
Mark Blundell, a Pac West winner of the Molson Indy in Toronto, guy.
So great, we managed to just get that interview in before the end of the programme. As I say, I hope you've enjoyed the show this week. Jeremy Shaw, Ben Edwards will be in Michigan next week for the Super Speedway event. That should be quite something. I hope you can join us on Eurosport to see how Mark Blundell and the others get on quite a different kind of racetrack. Thanks for being with us on Eurosport. See you next weekend. Bye-bye for now.